So I just wanted to note that we're making a video recording of this because for a couple of reasons, but I think it's going to be important information for the public. I've heard from a lot of people who said, like, I saw that you have an agenda posted, I can't join, but is it going to be available to watch afterwards? And I said, yes. So I hope that's all right. So this was actually supposed to be our traditional kind of budget get together that we have every spring a couple of weeks ago. As that was sort of all coming together, the COVID-19 pandemic hit, and I think all of our schedules sort of flew apart. So Senator Tarr's office was kind enough to put out some dates, and everyone else thankfully was able to work with them as we wiggled times around to try and find some time today to make that happen, so that we could get together. So I know Brian can talk about our budget a little bit, but I feel like that's sort of to the side now. I know I heard from a lot of people who just said, we have questions about elections, we have questions about town meetings, we have questions about legislation that's happening. Can we ask them on this call? And while this was a regional school district budget call originally, I feel like we're sort of becoming, the regional clearinghouse in this call to say, yeah, let's get an idea on what's going on the state side, what's already been done, kind of what's in process, not just for our kind of official boards, but also for our residents, because I know there are a lot of questions out there about kind of what resources are available now. I know Brian did a great job on Thursday covering what the district is doing in making resources available for our students and families. So I would love to go back over that quickly so that we can just really put a good kind of solid idea of what's happening out there and what's available to people. And hopefully, I know none of us have, looking glasses to see what's going to happen in 30 days or 60 days, but just an idea of, kind of what might be coming down the road. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian, so he can just do the 60,000 foot view, as it were, of our district budget to give you an idea of what that's looking like this year. And then I'd love to spend most of our time here on, questions and answers and kind of updates. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brian.
Great. Thank you, Narissa. So can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So it's kind of weird to be here sitting at March 30th and have the district budget feel like such a backseat item right now, given what's going on. But here we are, and obviously COVID has taken over all of our lives. But so the budget process this year was somewhat typical. We actually are in somewhat atypical. We actually had budget drivers similar to what other folks have dealt with in regards to healthcare. We this year had a particularly big hit with transportation because we rebid our transportation. We actually had a very good year in regards to, hello, Senator Tarr.
Hello, Brian.
How are you?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
I am well. We weren't sure if you were going to be a video guy or not, but you clearly
I was
are.
trying to find a comb. That's why the delay.
So I was just giving people a little recap of our budget process and to talk on bigger statewide things. But so our overall budget increase was roughly $2 million, 1.9 million and change. Ultimately, we are receiving about $68,000 new Chapter 70 monies. And obviously when 68,000 as compared to 1.9 million is not a good proportion. So that is borne almost primarily on the backs of our member towns. So this year, Salisbury, as it has become the largest contributor or sending the number of students, they are approaching 40% of the district. So they see the largest increase of roughly 911,000. So it remains to be seen how the spring plays out in regards to how these budgets are passed with the towns and extended timelines. But we did make some restorations in this budget for some key strategic new spending, such as full day kindergarten. We still offer tuition-based kindergarten, and you know that is becoming we're an anomaly across the state. And if there is a push towards free full day K, both as a moral discussion as well as if it becomes legislative action, we felt like we needed to take some action there. So we're actually phasing it over 3 years. We put $75,000. We would need to do that for 2 more years beyond fiscal 21, and that would get us down to free full-day K by September 2023, or September 2022, I'm sorry, the fiscal 23 year. So there were some other small strategic investments that we made, but primarily, as it has been, our budget is driven largely by salaries, by benefits. As I said, special education, we had a decent year after a very, very difficult year last year and into this year where we're running deficits because of special ed. It has been the typical budget drivers that are driving our costs this year. So, Nurse, do you want to stay on budget, or do you want to just do a quick update on kind of where we're at with our COVID response?
Yeah, no, I think if we could do everything that you would handle, both budget and COVID, and then we can kind of move on from there.
Okay.
I feel like it's intertwined.
It is very much intertwined, yes.
Brian,
Yeah.
before we move from where you are right now, could you just give us the rough increases for the other 2 member communities? You gave us Salisbury.
Yes, rather than speaking roughly. Kyle, you don't have those right in front of you, do you?
I'm actually pulling it up as we speak as well. Who's quicker to the mouse? I don't know.
This is now, I brought my my budget binder home, and I don't have a copy of it right here. And I have both of my computers going here. There was roughly $911,000 increase for Salisbury. I believe Newbury was just over 500,000. I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you know what? I
Brian?
don't have it on my local computer right now. It's on the server. So I can get that certainly to you in a.
Yeah, it's not urgent. It'd just be helpful to know, that's all.
Absolutely. You know what I'll do is I'll type it into the chat once I pull that up.
Okay, thank you.
And Dina, was that you? Were you
Yes,
saying?
that's me. I have the numbers in front of me right now if you need them.
Hey.
That'd be great.
Okay, for Newberry, it's a 5.35% increase, 502,325. Rowley, it's a 4.42% increase, 465,752. And Salisbury, it's a 7.2% increase, 911,268.
Dina, I don't write as fast as you speak.
I'm sorry.
No. I appreciate the info. Could you just recite the percentages again for Newbury and Rowley of the increase?
Certainly. Newberry is 5.35% and Rowley is 4.42%.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you, Dina. So in regards to our COVID response, as Marissa said, obviously there is a final financial implication. We have, in discussing this last week with our member towns, similar to what they have done, we are continuing to pay all of our employees, including hourly and part-time employees. We've included specifically our food service workers. We're running our food service director, Lucinda Ward, should get the Rock Star of the State Award. So Salisbury qualified for the 50% community waiving of serving meals during non-school days. So we are actually producing, as of today, it was about 350 individual students who identified as needing a meal. They don't have to, we're not literally qualifying them as a community qualification. So those meals are being produced at Salisbury Elementary. We have 5 bus runs that are going to approximately 150 bus stops. So we're delivering meals that way. It could be anyone that's any one of our member communities that's a student. So we actually have parents picking up at Salisbury Elementary as well. We have a curbside pickup every morning from 8 to 9 a.m. And then our partners at our Neighbors Table and in Amesbury and Boys and Girls Club in Salisbury have organized an army of volunteers that are actually delivering breakfast and lunches to families in Newbury and Rowley. So any student, and technically there's no way to know if they're Triton students because we're not checking. So even if an Amesbury student across the border and grabbed a meal. It's a reimbursable, federally reimbursable meal. But we're delivering to the homes of all Triton students. It's a breakfast and a lunch. It's a grab and go. So think of a Lunchable for the lunch, and a breakfast bar and a yogurt and a piece of fruit and a juice and milk for breakfast. We actually this week, as of yesterday, and as of today, it's still Monday, feels like Tuesday. But as of today, shifted to, rather than daily, it's actually an every other day. So today, parents picked up or we delivered a breakfast and a lunch for today and for tomorrow. And now we won't do it again till Wednesday. And then on Friday, we actually now are providing weekend meals as well. So we're handing, kind of getting kind of heavy. But on Friday with those deliveries, we're actually delivering 3 breakfasts and 3 lunches for every student. So it's, we've said this, I wish we could share the pictures, the experiences more widely. Obviously, we're dealing with a more sensitive topic, and folks obviously have a hard time, and there are folks who are finding themselves in need that never thought they would find themselves in need. So it's kind of a hard thing to publicize this, but man, I wish it could. It's unbelievable. So that will absolutely impact our food services program. That will run us well into the negative. Kyle and I are actually, as I said, we're paying all of our employees all of their normal base pay. We're currently, Kyle spent some quality time with Jay Sullivan from the Department of Ed today in regards to paying our transportation contracts. So the big discussion at the state level was to continue to pay hourly employees, because technically it's illegal. If there's no service rendered, we can't issue payment. So guidance came through DCC that we're going to keep these, pay hourly employees. There is a recommendation to continue to pay bus contractors. It's not a blanket, still pay the full bill, because buses aren't rolling, so fuel's not getting consumed and maintenance doesn't need to happen. But there absolutely is still a cost, obviously, and all of the drivers are still, we're with NRT Bus, all of their drivers are still active, they're not laying anyone off. So we're now in the process. We had this discussion with Finance Subcommittee last week. We have further guidance as of today that there would be some kind of negotiation with those costs, and then obviously pulling out fuel and other costs that they're not paying out so that they're not profiting, especially because my assumption would be, as a private business, there would be some stimulus money coming from the federal level. So kind of sharing the pain rather than the district shouldering the burden. So Kyle and I have a call with the owner of NRT Bus tomorrow morning with the terminal manager to start that discussion. It won't be a one-time discussion, but we're in the process of unpacking that. The other discussion that I'm sure all of you across the state have had discussions in regards to paying of tuitions for out-of-district special education placements. Obviously, consortiums and collaboratives are a portion of us, right? I sit on the board of directors for both Crest Collaborative and North Shore Consortium. So they are an extension of districts. So we're absolutely going to continue to pay those tuition bills. And there is absolutely services that are being rendered for those tuitions. There's some discussion about private tuitions, and that was another topic of discussion. We'll continue to work with all those the private day placements. So we have some more unpacking to do in that regard. Deb's friend walking across the camera. So that's our response to date. We're still continuing to unpack the academic impact. Our teachers have jumped incredibly reasonably. I know there are communities that had challenges working with their teachers association. Ours have been phenomenal. Our teachers, they've agreed without any negotiations. They've agreed that to be available 4 hours a day for families. They're providing daily content and instruction. The commissioner gave new guidance last week in regards to what we can and cannot do, and whether we can introduce new material or if it's reinforcing older material. So we're unpacking that with a kind of a phase 2 plan that we will have ready to go in the next day or two, that would go into effect on Monday, April 6th. And my goal there is to not have a phase 3. So right now we're planning through May 4th. but whatever plan we arrive at, and met with the president and vice president of the association today, they agree the same thing. Let's have a plan that works. If it goes beyond May 4th, then the plan would work beyond May 4th, and maximizing what we can do academically, all the while understanding that as a superintendent, academics are vitally important, right? We are in the business of teaching and learning. Right now, it is not the priority, right? It's health and well-being, and sometimes it's just the basics of getting food and shelter. But even in we've had these discussions with parents. Even in the family that looks perfect, right? There's all the right supports. It's all the kids, they're achieving this, that, and the other. At the end of the day, we don't know what's going on with those families as far as individuals getting sick. We have staff members who are now immediate family members who are extremely ill. So this is only going to increase from here. So the assumptions we can make are shrinking in regards to what we can assume can happen after that. We're going to do everything we can. We're going to provide all the resources and all the wraparound that we can. But at the end of the day, academics cannot be the top priority right now when people are in survival. So we have amazing counselors and social workers, and they're out there. And you have the kiddos who like to hide from teachers when they're not finding them. So we have people literally going after those kids and hounding them until they resurface and re-engage. So we have morning meetings happening via Zoom. Kind of fun to get invited into one of those meetings and see 18 little kindergarten faces trying to figure this all out. So everyone's adjusting to a new normal, but we're hoping it's not the perpetual new normal. But that's been our approach to date.
Brian, can we talk a little bit about the bus contract? Because Lenny and I have also been talking to Justin Bartholomew about this.
Yep.
And let me just say at the outset, I would think it would be all of our common goal to maximize federal reimbursement in any way that we can. In fact, I just got off a leadership call, and right now A&F is trying to unpack everything that's in the CARES Act and figure out how it's going to flow to individual entities. But one issue that's come up, and it's a little bit technical, but what is the deliverable in the contract? In other words, is it students transported or capacity to transport, or what is benchmarked in terms of what triggers a payment?
So it varies by city and town and the way you structure your contract. Feel free to jump in, Kyle, if I start lying. Our contract is written as a per bus, per run, per day. So the deliverable is the run occurring with students riding. So I'm sure that owners of companies that have these type of true deliverable contract where it's not a flat rate would like to say that, well, that means that if the bus is running, if we're able to run it, then you have to pay. I think we'll be successful in our negotiations and discussions with John McCarthy from NRT. But our contract is absolutely written as it's a deliverable. It's the bus runs with the students riding. We don't pay on snow days, obviously, because that extends. But if there's ever a closure, it's not a deliverable because the students haven't ridden the bus. So we're in a good position the way we've written our contracts. I like to think that was intentional. But it's absolutely, there are others so we pay a 1/10, right? So there's the total assumed cost for 24 runs that happen over 180 days. And we pay the bills, we're invoiced on a 1/10, that's a cash flow issue. But our actual payment is based on the number of runs per day. Yeah.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, and that may be different for Justin, I should say Dr. Bartholomew in Pentucket. So that may be different depending the way that they have their contract structured there with Salter. But I believe the last time I talked to Justin, I think they're similar to ours.
Hey, Brian, you mentioned that the bus companies have kept the drivers on payroll, but they're obviously not driving. Have they stated a reason why they're on payroll, or have they stated like what exactly they're doing if they're not making runs?
I don't know. Honestly, that's an email I saw about 2 hours ago. I just got that from the terminal manager in Newbury. So it was a very brief email. It was, my guess is it had something to do with unemployment insurance and something where they had to trigger some notification to us that they're not laying those folks off. My guess is so that those folks can't double dip. But it was very, very brief just to confirm that all of their drivers are being paid their regular rates. And
Well,
I
it's
don't,
been several weeks now, so I just didn't know if they stated a reason as to why they haven't signed up for unemployment benefits.
yeah, they did not. They did not.
When the meals are being delivered, are they being delivered using the bus infrastructure, or how do they get out there?
So
That
they,
was my
yes, yep, yes, but we only use 5 of the 24 runs. So there's, 24 runs over the 3 towns. We can only deliver in Salisbury because of the way we've qualified the meals. Actually, there was a waiver, I think that was just yesterday afternoon, Kyle, we just got that email, just unpacking that
Correct.
waiver has changed. So we might be able to start rolling buses in Newbury and Raleigh, but unpack what that means. But as of today, so far, it's been the meals have to be produced and delivered within the town of Salisbury because of the community qualification. So we were only allowed to run the buses within that town, and then it's volunteers, Boys and Girls Club, and our neighbor's table it was individuals delivering door to door for that regard. But those are, and like Kyle and I have said, those fully, absolutely, we pay those full runs because that's an actual run being delivered. I think more often than not, we will, or more likely than not, where we'll land is a kind of a percentage of the total invoice, and that's what we have to tease out.
Right, and correct me if I'm wrong too. So part of the reason they've been keeping the drivers on the payroll rather than unemployment is to maintain a continuity of service. So when school does start back up, if all these bus drivers were laid off, there'd be a significant challenge in bringing them back. There may be some who seek unemployment elsewhere. So in order to facilitate that, they've kept them on payroll, but that's not consistent amongst all bus companies. Just hearing from other school business officials in other districts, there are a number of bus companies who have laid off their drivers.
And are expecting full payment, by the way, right?
Right. So as we go towards negotiations as well as in terms of the price that we'd be paying in this interim period, we'd want to know, are you paying your bus drivers right now?
Since we're on the unemployment question, Bruce, do you have any sense of when businesses might be reopening and how unemployment is going to be handled in the coming weeks or months? Have you guys been discussing that?
We have an awful lot, Damon. Our unemployment system is being completely overwhelmed. Order of magnitude, on any given day in Massachusetts, we would usually have at a max about 35,000 people running through the system. And we are now in the hundreds of thousands. Well, I shouldn't say that. About 150 to 160,000. We think that's going to grow exponentially. So here's part of the problem. The feds are giving us money in basically 2 buckets. One bucket to shore up the existing system because our trust fund would be bankrupted if we didn't get some additional assistance for the regular folks under traditional eligibility. The second bucket is for all of the folks who have never paid into unemployment insurance before, and that is creating a challenge for us because we don't want to lump them in to the regular system because it would overwhelm it. So right now, Administration and Finance and Secretary Heffernan was on the phone on the leadership call today with the governor talking about how they're trying to figure out how the channels are going to work for this money. And a complicating factor is that there are things we need to do as state government to make this money available for the folks that aren't going the traditional route, but yet they're seeing in the news that the federal bill has been passed and they're trying to get into the state system, and that's causing a huge problem because they're not eligible. So when they try to get in, they get a message that you're ineligible, but it gums up the whole thing. So there's a lot of stuff happening, Damon. It's one of the biggest issues that we're facing, not only at the level of the UI system, but all of our offices as legislators. We're getting a ton of calls about this.
Yeah, it's one of the things people are asking me a lot about. So I thought since you were here, I'd ask you because it's not something that I have any expertise in. So I thought you might have some either some forecasting or some more information. Do you have any sense of when the non-traditional unemployment benefit system is going to be up and running for people?
Probably in the next several days. One of the things that's happening right now is the administration is literally hiring hundreds more people to staff our system. And as soon as they're up and running, then the situation should change. Again, order of magnitude, probably anywhere from 3 to 7 days before we see some change. But also, all of us have guidance that we can send to you, and I'll make a note, Damon, that we'll send you what we have on this so far.
That would be great, thank you.
This is a situation that really demands a lot of patience because we're in uncharted waters.
Yeah, and if I can just add to that, Senator Tarr, thank you. Our offices, all the legislators that are on, I know that Rep. Muir is on, Rep. Hill's on, I'm not sure if there are others on, but all of us as your legislators, we along with our staffs can provide anybody who needs assistance with guidance through the process, literally step by step. If you want to call, we can sit with you online and take you step by step with the process. But it is just to reiterate what Senator Tarr said, it's a matter of them not having the staff yet trained to be able to deal with the influx of applications that they're getting. So we've been asking DOA for guidance on this, and we've been asking for assistance at the state level to make that connection. But Governor Baker said just today at his 1 p.m. press conference that, a lot of the issues come with the state's technological ability to be able to process claims quickly and to connect with what the feds have approved. So the feds have approved all of this stuff. It's just the fact that we haven't been able to catch up technologically speaking yet with what they have approved. So if you do have problems navigating the system, our office, along with all the other legislative offices that are here, have been helping people and guiding them through the process step by step. So send people to us.
And what about for small businesses? Because, like the bus contractors, people are trying to decide if they should keep people on, let them go so they can start collecting unemployment. And nobody wants to fire someone during the middle of an economic health crisis, but businesses are going to start folding if they have to keep their doors closed. And so
there are a couple of different things that we're aware that are happening right now. So the feds just actually approved what's it called? What's it called, Bruce? The protection plan for payment protection plan.
Yeah, it's an employment protection plan. And
the exact name of it. They just
what it does is convert a loan to a grant if you keep your employees on board.
Yeah, so you have to keep, so there are a couple different options. You can apply for a loan through the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program that the feds approved. And that actually just recently, according to the latest federal bill for small businesses, when you apply for that, you become eligible for a $10,000 grant, not loan. So if you apply for the EIDL loan, you automatically become eligible for that $10,000 small business grant. You have to have under 500 employees. That's the federal definition for a small business, but you become eligible for that $10,000 loan. Additionally to that, through a separate program, there is this, employment protection program, and I'll get the exact name of it for you so that we can find it. We'll send you all the links afterwards. Tom's on the line, my office assistant. He can send this all out to you. But according to that new program, if you can maintain your employees for 8 weeks, if you can keep payroll for 8 weeks and keep your staff on, the loan will be forgiven according to the CARES Act that just came out that includes this provision. You have to maintain that payroll. You have to keep people on payroll. But if you do, they'll give you your payroll coverage and then actually an additional 25% to cover other costs associated with running your small business, like utilities, rent, whatever it is that you need to keep your business operating and functional, during this time, during its shutdown. Obviously, you're not providing the services that you were providing before, but at least to keep it going and to make sure that you don't have to close your doors and shut down. Whatever the operational costs are that you need to keep covered during this time, if you can keep your employees on for 8 weeks, that loan will be forgiven according to this new program that's out there. And we'll send you the link to that and make sure that we assist you through the process if you're interested in that. But I know a lot of small businesses are debating on what they should do. You know, should they lay off people and have them apply for unemployment? Should they keep them on and try to go through this new process to try to get this loan forgiveness program? You know, it's up to you. And we can certainly help to navigate if you have those tough decisions to make about what might be the best option by going through what makes you eligible, you know, and whether or not each one is worth well for you. And I think that's a very specific, business specific thing that you're gonna have to consider, you know, if that's good for you. It's what's good for one small business is maybe not good for another. So
well, I think I'd love to get that up on the town website just so that there's other places that's easy for people to find, because, you know, it's good. I think it's going to be facing more and more people as this drags on, because you know, especially in the smaller towns, I think there's a lot of small businesses. Not everyone works for larger firms.
It's called the Paycheck Protection Program. So we'll send that to you. It's called the Paycheck Protection Program. But yeah, agreed. Sorry, Representative, go ahead.
No, that's all right. A lot of this information is going to be put up on the Executive Office of Workforce Development once we get the directive from the Secretary of Department of Labor. We're currently waiting for that information. Once we get that, it will go up on all of our Facebooks, but that's a great place to look, is the Department of Workforce Development, because they're going to have all this information up. We hope this week. We're praying that we're going to get these directives this week, but we're waiting to see what they're going to be.
One other thing, Damon, that you might find helpful is we just got word from Congressman Moulton that tomorrow afternoon at 5 p.m. he's going to be hosting a forum with the Massachusetts SBA Director, Bob Nelson. And it's going to be on Facebook, and we'll try to get you information about that as well. And small businesses are invited to participate. So there'll be questions and answers with folks at the federal level about this.
Great. Yeah, I mean,
Can I just real quick break in for 2 seconds, Damon?
Yep.
So there are a couple of kind of comments and questions that I'm seeing in the chat. So I just wanted to go back real quick before we go on too far. Raleigh Finance Committee member Peterson Sulo is asking, he had said that he heard that the federal relief could take a significant amount of time. I was wondering if we could comment on that kind of before we move on. And I also wanted to note, we have a couple of members of the Hamilton-Wenham School Committee on, since they share a number of legislators with Triton. And Michelle Bailey had just noted that they believe that Salter, who they use for their bus company, this goes back to Bruce's question, is not paying their employees. So I just wanted to make that note before we go on.
That's very important to know. And I think the point that Senator DiZoglio made is very important about that. There are different consequences if you keep your employees on versus if you don't. And there's a very strong incentive to keep them on so that essentially the loan becomes a grant. And so that's why we need to share as much information as we can so that folks can make educated decisions about how that impacts them.
Do we have any idea, I'll throw this out there to anybody, about how long it might be before folks are seeing that federal-based relief? I know it was just...
That's what I think I was just telling you, is we're waiting to get the directive from Secretary. And once that directive comes through, all of these questions will be answered for the most part. We unfortunately have to wait and see what happens with the directive. And once we get that directive, again, most of these questions will be answered.
Okay.
A big part of what's being sorted out right now is how money flows to who. So for instance, are there things that will go directly to the communities and school districts? Are there things that require us to take action at the state level? Are there things that are done on an individual level? So a big task right now that the administration is working on is trying to figure out, like almost like a flow chart of how does a dollar from the CARE Act get to a recipient that's eligible. And that's really complicated. So hopefully over the next several days, it'll get figured out.
Perfect. Jeff, did you have a question? I saw your hand raised briefly over there.
Am I unmuted?
You are unmuted.
Right. Bruce, for the loan part, will that actually go through banks?
Some of it probably will. Bob Nelson explained on my morning radio show a couple of days ago that some of the loans will actually be initiated through SBA approved banks. But Jeff, it's also important to understand that things are changing almost minute to minute. But the idea behind using the approved SBA approved banks is that the infrastructure already exists and people have relationships with them. But we are in a brave new world here. So we'll see what happens from day to day, but that's the idea right now.
And just to add to that, Senator, on the Economic Impact Group today, actually, we were talking in the State Senate about the fact that a lot of these banks have been approved to distribute these loans. And, you know, a lot of people are not comfortable navigating through the SBA process, but they are comfortable going to their local lending institution that they know are community banks, so on and so forth. So if that is what people are choosing to do and they are SBA approved, which many are, feel free to contact our office if you're wondering, if you can't get in touch with them or, you know, whatever, if you have any questions, our offices can help you figure out if they're SBA approved before you bother calling over there. But it's my understanding, based on the most recent conversation we just had this morning, that yes, these banks will be able to, like Senator Tarr said, to conduct the applications, to be the facilitators of these applications that are going to SBA and to help you through the process. So it's all going to be based on who you're more comfortable going through. If you want to go online, go online. If you want to go to your local lending institution, then go to them. It's up to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on unemployment before we move on? Because I know that's a big topic. Definitely one I'm hearing a lot about too.
So
Alicia just wrote one in
the chat. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. So this is from Alicia. She asks, what defines keeping staff on? Can you lay them off for now and hire them back once the loans are approved, or will that make you ineligible for any loans?
So the question that we actually just got asked literally on the conference call right before this with the businesses from Newburyport and Amesbury, and my staff is currently looking into this at this moment. If I get an answer, because they're actually looking into this right now, I will jump on and I'll grab the answer for you. But yeah, that's a question that was asked, and we're on it. So thank you for asking it. Great question.
Perfect. Anything else on unemployment? All right. I can either open it back up to the legislators if you want to talk a little bit more. I know, just to kind of give you a little bit of direction, one of the things that I've heard a lot about is elections and town meetings, both seeing posts on social media from people saying, are we really going to have to go to town meeting? What about elections? That type of thing. If you could maybe, that's one thing that I think people would appreciate hearing about, is kind of the steps that have already been taken to avoid those large gatherings where there could potentially be a significant amount of risk.
Who wants to take this one?
go ahead, Brad.
We actually we're working on a bill today and also last week between the House and the Senate that would allow town meetings to be pushed out. The dates have been set up for town meetings, for elections to be pushed out. We leave it up to boards of selectmen. We leave it up to moderators to work together. That information out to the public. We've also moved some state elections around that we're going to be put into place, that special elections. But locally, we untied your hands so that if you had a town meeting that was supposed to take place in the next couple of weeks, you can move it out to June 30th. We've also looked at trying to help you with your budgets. If you can't come to a consensus by June 30th, we're going to allow you to do 1/12 budgets until you can finalize your budgets. And Michelle, I know you're going to ask about the regional school districts. We're working on that as we speak, the language to allow you to do that as well. And if I'm not mistaken, all this should be on the governor's desk, signed into law, and will help our cities and towns and school districts.
So Brad, we have it on the floor of the Senate right now. We are actually recessed as we work out some last minute details. But I think one thing that would be important to everyone on the call is that we're trying to give the same flexibility to regional school districts and school districts as we have for municipalities with regard to postponing budgets. So our goal is to have this on the governor's desk by the close of business today. I think that's a reasonable goal, but it has not happened yet.
And thank you, Narissa, for highlighting that to us, the need to make you eligible for the 112 budgets as well, and to use your excess funds to apply to current budgeting. That was really important. And Senator Roche, who is the chair of the Municipalities Committee, and I had a great conversation about it. She ensured me that it was in the final version of the bill, on the Senate side at least. And like Senator Tarr said, we're just waiting to make sure that it makes its way through the final process and onto the governor's desk in time.
And a quick shout out to Hamilton Wenham as well. Michelle Bailey has been contacting our offices as well as Narissa. And again, you're the folks who hear this right on the ground, and to let us know is important. Because if we don't hear from you, we're not going to be able to get this language in the budget. And because we did, we were able to work with both the House and the Senate to try and get this language in. So thank you both.
I would echo that. Thank you for all of the input. And as soon as we have a final bill, we will all circulate it to everybody on the call and beyond.
That is terrific. And thank you so much for being so responsive on that, and so very supportive, because I have to say there was some definite fear there that that there was going to be a methodology for municipalities to continue, and that we were going to be essentially dead in the water on July 1st, and not, I mean, as much as we want to be able to pay our employees, not be able to continue to do that because we may not have a passed budget at that point. So definitely appreciate how, I know there were times when I was sending out emails and 20 minutes later I was getting responses back. So very, very much.
I think you also need to understand if let's say the language doesn't get in there today, we are literally doing a bill a day, or trying to offer a bill a day. Bruce mentioned this earlier. This is an hour-to-hour, day-to-day situation where we're trying to figure out what we need to do. So this won't be the last bite at the apple when it comes to municipal relief or school relief. So if something doesn't happen today, I don't want red flags to be thrown all around, because we're going to have some other opportunities to fix this for you should this not happen today. So let's be very clear. Day-to-day, and many more bills are going to come our way to try and help municipalities as we see what issues need to be addressed.
That is perfect. Thank you so much.
It seems likely that we will be able to postpone the elections and the town meetings until the virus has run its course.
Yes.
Okay.
One thing that we should probably touch on, which is sort of the 800-pound gorilla on the call. I'd normally say in the room, but it's no longer relevant. And that is what's going to happen with the state budget, because we know that you are all trying to plan what you're going to do. And I think at the 30,000-foot view, the most important thing to say is this is not going to be anywhere close to a normal budget year. And we're trying to figure out how to deal with things differently. And so I'm also seeing Peter's asking how much rainy day fund money have we used so far? And the answer is very little, because we've been waiting to see what the feds are going to do and spend their money before we spend ours. We have about $3.5 billion in the rainy day fund, but we could have easily already spent that. But here's the problem. We are going to have a cash flow issue at the state level because we've postponed the filing deadline for income tax. Now, rough numbers, usually about 2/3 of the state budget, which is about $44 billion, comes from the income tax. So when we tell people that you don't have to pay income taxes by the deadline of April 15th, that creates a massive cash flow issue for us that we cannot address in the same way that the feds do. Because while it's rumored that Jeff Walker has a printing press in his basement, we cannot print money. And so the feds can, we can't. We have to have a balanced budget. So the consequence of pushing out that deadline is that we are going to have a borrowing bill of some sort so that we can cover our cash flow needs before we get money coming from the feds. Now, the indications coming from the CARES Act are that we're gonna get somewhere between about $1.5 billion and $3 billion. So knowing that is the only thing that really enabled us to be able to agree to push out the tax deadline. But we still have to do something to make sure that we're able to pay our bills between when we get that money and right now. And that's really important, particularly when you think about things like the last local aid payment, which is due to come out very soon, and it represents a very large amount of state funding. So that one of the challenges, not to get too far into the weeds for us as a legislature, is that usually borrowing requires a 2/3 vote of the House and the Senate. But right now we haven't been meeting in formal session, so that taking that vote would be very hard. So we're exploring our options on how we might do it, and I know this is going to make Senator DiZoglio very happy. We are exploring what we can do electronically, whether it's constitutional, whether we might actually need to get the SJC to give us guidance about what we can do. But passing that borrowing bill is going to be very important. I think we'll be able to accomplish it, but it does present a challenge. So one of the things that's going to be hard is all of our revenue estimates right now are pretty much out the window. And so we normally would have an agreed upon number. We actually do still have one, but it's not relevant anymore on what we can expect for state revenue. What I've been saying, and I defer to my colleagues about their thoughts as well, but it's going to be almost impossible to predict out a whole year and do a normal budget. So what I've been encouraging is maybe we do either 1/12 or do them 3 months at a time, because we just can't predict what's going to happen. So we're looking at that, and I think we're looking at a much different budget process than the one that we usually have, where the House does theirs and then the Senate does theirs, and then we negotiate for several weeks. We need to avoid that. So what we're trying to do is see if we can get to a single document that we can all work from, rather than having two different documents and some very protracted negotiations.
Well, I'm being told, and I'm concerned at what I'm being told, that at one point in this year we were going to be $1 billion above and beyond what we had expected in revenues, and I'm being told now that we could be as much as $1 billion below what we had anticipated because of what's been going on. And I was also told that going into the next fiscal year, we could be upward to almost $3 billion in deficit compared to what we thought we were going to be at. So moving forward, as you probably know, the House was just about ready to put out a budget, which has now been totally blown up because of the revenue picture that Bruce just spoke about. We're going to have a full meeting or a phone call tomorrow with the House members to figure out what we're going to do moving forward. And I can assure you that the budget is probably going to be the #1 topic of conversation. I see Michelle has asked, can we count on the funds expected from the Student Opportunity Act? And many of those funds, Michelle, as you know, are subject to appropriation. So moving forward, we have to see exactly what we think the new revenue picture will be, and whether it be for local aid or whether it be for healthcare needs or environmental needs, we're going to have to really tighten our belt moving forward. I think it's safe to say that your legislative delegation still feels very strongly about local aid and will continue to do what we can to keep the promises that were made. However, I go back in history to about, Bruce, remind me, 2003, 2004, when we had an economic downturn, and one of the first things that was cut was local aid. So I am waving a red flag to all of my cities and towns, to all my school districts, that what came out in the governor's budget at this point, I would not depend upon until we can get a better picture of what the revenues are going to look like for the state moving forward. We are, and I'm being blunt because I think I need to be, we're bleeding revenues right now in a very, very big way. We, as Bruce already stated, we have to have a balanced budget by constitution. So moving forward, if we don't have that balanced budget, we are going to have to make cuts not mid-year, toward the end of this fiscal year, to make up the difference, to make sure that we have a balanced budget. And one of the fears, going back to the question about the rainy day fund, and I think Peter asked it, we're hesitant to go into that fund because of what could happen in the next fiscal year. At least that's what we're being told as of today. So can we count on the funds? Michelle, right now, I'm concerned that the budget in general is going to come in much lower than we had anticipated and agreed upon. And how we bring that into balance is going to be a huge question that we're going to have to answer in the next 2 months. Sorry to be the Grim Reaper.
I guess I'll just I'll help you move on, Brad. I'll jump in here. Yeah, just to follow what was already said, which unfortunately is the reality. What both Senator Tarr said and Representative Hill said. The state is looking at some really bleak prospects regarding our revenue right now. I do just want to say that obviously the local delegation, it's important to stress that the local delegation is committed to ensuring that we're fighting tooth and nail for your local aid, your Chapter 70 funding, and for your special education funding and regional school transportation and all of that, that we're going to continue to fight for that as one of our major, main priorities. And just one example of that is, I just spoke with Senator Rodericks, who is the chair of Ways and Means recently, and our conversation had to do with that tightening of the belt. And it was immediately talked about how, we might be being asked to forgo our earmarks this year. Normally we get a certain amount of earmarks. We get to go to the local nonprofits and assist with, a certain amount of allocated dollars that we get to help our communities with for local projects. Things like the District Commission, the Merrimack River District Commission, things like, Pettingill House, for example. These types of things normally get funded in part by some of the earmarks that we can get for them. And we were basically, asked or told that, this might be a year where we might be having to forgo some of those things in order to make sure that we can keep funding for our priorities like public safety and education, funded at the levels that they need to be funded at. So, the cornerstone of budgeting, the cornerstones of it, education, public safety, healthcare, all these, transportation, those are the things that we're really going to be focusing on. And I think trimming the fat around the budget immediately is what's starting to happen. But these are our priorities. So just rest assured that even though, yes, it's bleak looking at the revenues, and we all need to be aware of that, and make sure that we're really aware of that we're going to be doing everything that we can to make sure that these issues are highlighted and that you are getting the funds that you need as much as is humanly possible.
And I would add to that by just saying, I think it's fair to say that we all agree that education is one of those core items that we need to fund. And so that and local aid will be two of the things we've always fought to protect, and we'll continue to do that.
Now, since you guys just brought up local aid, I know that there's a specific local aid for schools, but I'm curious what's being done on the state level for places like Anna Jake's and the emergency management that's going on in all three of our towns right now. I'm sure I assume Salisbury and Raleigh have also declared a state of emergency and have the emergency management teams working. So I know some money comes from the federal government for that, but I'm curious about what's going on at the state level to secure supplies for Anna Jake's, and since we're talking about money, what's going to happen around the emergency management funding and programs that we do at the local level?
Yeah, that's a great question, Damon. And the feds are coming through with a lot of aid on that. We haven't seen the details yet, but I think a portion of that is dedicated for our local hospitals. They're going to be requiring a lot of that. There are emergency shelters being built, even emergency rooms for patients being built on that. And the governor issued a statement over the weekend where they created a portal for people to go to where they can either sell or donate PPEs. And that just opened So if anyone, any person, any group, any business out there has masks, gloves, anything like that, they can go to that portal and we can more quickly procure them. I just saw something on the internet. I think we just got about 10,000 ventilators just recently today, promised to us. That I think is dedicated for our hospitals. We haven't seen the final details, but the feds are coming through with some help on that. Unless one of the other legislators here have seen details, we are going to be seeing something. I just haven't seen a final dollar amount unless Bruce or Brad or Diana have seen anything.
Order of magnitude, it's about 130 to 150 billion dollars.
Oh, wow.
For the hospitals. And again, one of the challenges is to figure out how that's going to flow. But the issue of supply stuff is a particularly personal sore spot for me, Damon. We've been leading the effort on the part of the Senate with people like Diana and all of our colleagues to source material like PPE. And the reason it's a sore spot is because there are a lot of scams out there. And you saw the governor express his frustration a couple days ago about that, where people are trying to take advantage of the situation. And it is infuriating that they are doing that, both in terms of price and not delivering. So on a regular basis, we are all getting calls from somebody who has just discovered a secret cache of material like N95 masks that no one else in the world knows about. And if we send them the money up front, they'll deliver it to Massachusetts. And they do everything short of saying that they inherited it from a Nigerian prince. It's really bad. And everybody in state government is spending a lot of time ferreting out all of the leads that we're getting. And I want to put a finer point on something that Lenny said that I think is really important, is that we have been dealing with this on the part of the Senate, and the House has another group, but as of this afternoon, there is now a unified structure for people to report through a single portal, stuff that they want to volunteer, stuff that they want to sell to us to make an offer of sale, and another portal for people who want to volunteer their personal services. And we're going to be getting that out. And I can't stress this enough. We all have to follow a single chain of supply and distribution, because if we don't, we won't prioritize the delivery of this material to the people that really need it. Everybody wants it. It's important, particularly with regard to PPE. But if we don't follow the directives of the CDC and the DPH for who gets what first, the system's going to break down. So say hello to Hirak, who just came in over my shoulder, but he's passing me a note. I'm going to have to leave in just a moment to go close out the Senate session, but I really want to stress this. Please use the portals that we are going to share with you, because that's the only way we're going to make sure that things get to the right place, as opposed to side deals being made. It's a really, really important thing.
And Damon, I just want to add that I talked to my public safety officials today in Hamilton, and they have been working with the MEMA folks, and they actually just got a note today that they can start applying for some of these this needed equipment, and that they hope to have delivery either midweek to maybe the end of the week. So FEMA and MEMA have been working very closely together, and finally today they got that notice that they can start applying for some of those needed equipment that we've been talking about. So our district, which includes yours, is part of that MEMA area. So I'm assuming that your public safety officials would have gotten that notice and will start applying for things as of today.
Sounds good.
Oh, go ahead, Damon.
Oh no, I'm good.
I just want to jump in just for the previous question. We did get an answer to that regarding employees that you've already laid off. Hopefully this is a good time to jump in. I just want to make sure I answer it. So my staff said they looked into it, and since many businesses have already been forced to make staffing reductions in response to vanishing customers and lost revenues, the legislation includes a clause that allows them to qualify for loan forgiveness if they have rehired back to pre-crisis levels by June 30th. It's retroactive. So previously laid off can be returned to payroll, and then you would still qualify for loan forgiveness as long as you hire back to your pre-crisis level. So you'd have to bring back everyone, is my understanding. we can look into this even further. If you still have questions, obviously just shoot me an email, or your legislator that's on here an email. But yeah, you just have to have them rehired by June 30th, and then you would qualify.
I'd like to add just one thing quickly before I have to go to, and I'll be back, but I have to close out the session. And that is that a big issue was surge capacity for hospitals. So one of the more recent developments is the idea that we're going to take some nursing homes around the state, and they're going to become treatment facilities for folks with coronavirus so that they can be isolated in those units. And it's going to be particularly important for subacute care. So someone who's been to the hospital that isn't ready to go home will have a place to go in a nursing home so they can continue to receive treatment in a specialized unit without risk of infecting everybody else in the facility that they're in. That is a massive project that's being undergone right now to identify those facilities and stand them up. So for instance, I was talking to somebody that has a few nursing homes yesterday, and they were tearing out all the carpet because that is not conducive to an infection-free environment. So there's a lot of work going on to create surge capacity, both in places like college dorms. So here on Beacon Hill, for instance, Suffolk has volunteered some of its dorms, but also in nursing homes, because the guidance that we're getting seems like we're going to see a rapid intensification of the number of cases in the next couple of weeks.
All right, with that, I do know you have to step out, so I just want to say, in case we're not here when you come back, thank you so much for taking the time, Senator Tarr, to come and talk with us today, because I think this is, I mean, obviously there's a ton of questions, and I think it's tremendously helpful, so.
Well, thanks, Teresa. I would just say we have a tremendous team of legislators in our region, and they're well represented on this call. We all work together, and we're all a strong voice, but we also couldn't do it without the strength you give us. So thanks to all of you, and let's do this as often as we need to.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bruce.
So Michelle has a question about, is there any update on when the new food distribution plan information will be available? And I'll leave that to whoever wants to take up the mantle.
I think, again, we're waiting for direction at this point, and hopefully sometime this week we'll have something that we can get back to you folks. Day to day, unfortunately.
Yes, I think we're all very aware of that. I know one of the other questions that I've heard a lot of is, you know, what's coming down the road that I guess that, you know, the state level officials are hearing about or thinking about already, but hasn't kind of hit the general population. Concerns that we have to have maybe down the road about long-term care facilities and things like that. Do you, I mean, I'm assuming that there's kind of these higher level conversations going on that aren't really making out in the governor's press conferences and things like that. I don't know if any of the legislators on can talk about kind of what you're hearing in that direction.
I will just say from the Senate side, what we're doing is we've actually broken down these types of things by subject matter and then formed small working groups around them. So some of us are, you know, more aware of what's going on certain topics than others. When you got the question about unemployment and loans and small businesses, that's where I was put to work. That's the area that I was put into work on. So I'm part of the economic impact the state Senate right now. So chances of us pertaining to that, I'm going to have an answer for you right now or be able to get one very quickly. Regarding some of these other things, there are other subgroups that are really the ones that are delving into the response on these different topics and go through the pipeline day by day, like Brad, you know, like Rob was just, it literally is day by day the answers to these things. So if something's not out there right now, we don't necessarily know about. I just heard from the you know, governor's press conference that he was creating this one-stop shop web portal for PPE. You know, I think that's great. I did not know that was going to happen. So up until literally that press conference, in every single conversation I was having with people, I was sending them a different form. And now we're going back and we're trying to tell them, no, 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 never mind, go to this website instead. This is the way we're going to do it. So I just thank you for your patience in all of this. It's something, you know, that we've had to practice as well, and getting information a little bit more slowly than we like, but it's a learning curve for us, you know, divvying up these responsibilities. And instead of working on one bill at a time where everybody's part of it, what we have is we have these subgroups working on their subject matter and then presenting it to the larger membership once they've finished with their sort of, you know, final rendition of the bill before they ask us for amendments. And that's a different process that we're just getting used to. So I don't have answers to all of these different things, but I can tell you, if you send us a list of your questions, we will make the phone calls to the other legislators for who, you know, for whom it is their subject matter right now, and ask them what the latest update is. Again, that could change the next day, but what the latest update is as of today, and get those answers for you, and then stay in touch moving forward if anything changes. I think that email and sending in those questions written down, it makes it easier on us because we can, you know, forward links to you and forward websites to you a little easily than phone or over these types of, which are great face communication. You know, I can send you information about the UI stuff and the small business loan stuff and all of that over email a little bit more easily.
So I was just going to say that before we went on too much farther, is that I have, I believe, email addresses for every single person that's on the call right here. So if the legislators want to send information to me, what I'll do is collate that into one big email and then get that out to all of the local officials that are on the call. And then they can post it to their respective websites or do whatever they need to with that, just so that we don't have, because this is one of my personal, there is such an information deluge right now. I feel like I had to set my phone in the other room because I was so afraid that, you know, the emails just keep coming, and trying to track down where you saw specific information or, you know, who it came from. That's really, really difficult. So if I feel like if we can pull it together, I can pull it together into one digest and then get it out. Hopefully that'll be really helpful to everybody and kind of limit the deluge a little bit.
That would be huge. That would be huge. That way we prevent, you know, duplication of services as well, right? So we're not answering the same question 10 times for the same group of people. I think it helps us to streamline the process too. So thank you, Narissa. Yeah, that would be great.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
We certainly can do that, Narissa, but I also would recommend that people go to the Department of Public Health website every night about 8 p.m. because they do a report from the command center every single day, and it gives you an update of everything that has happened that particular day, as well as gives you updates on the coronavirus numbers of those who have been affected, those who have died from it, and things of that sort. But it also gives you a complete up-to-date of what the governor spoke about that day, what the administration's doing, and things of that sort. It's very, very informational. Facebook postings, every one of us has a Facebook, and as soon as information is gathered, we put it right on our Facebook for people to see. But the DPH website is probably the best source of information, and it's around 8 o'clock is when that command center report comes out, and really and truly it's filled with some really, really good information.
Yeah, no, that's been terrific. And may I pay some compliments here and say, I know not all of our legislators are traditional social media warriors, but a lot of you have stepped up, and that's very much appreciated, because those are the things that I have gone back to again and again as well.
And to answer your question, a lot of the issues that pop up are a result of a piece of legislation that has just passed. Because once something has passed, there is an effect to what has been done. And we usually have to go back, as was the case with the school districts and the regional school districts with the 112th. Everything had been proposed minus that language. Well, once it was found out that the language wasn't in there, then we heard from you. And that's what's been happening, is as bills get filed and bills get passed, we see what the ramifications are of them, and then we go back and we address it. And that's what's happening at the federal level as well as the state level. So as Diana said, it's day to day, it's hour to hour, what the issue is that we're going to be dealing with. Right now, it's the budget, it's healthcare, and it's economic development. Without the economy booming as it once was, we're going to have some pretty bad decisions that we're going to have to make.
Absolutely. Did any of that, I know, Rep. Mira, did you have anything else you wanted to add kind of on anything else, I guess I would say, anything that hasn't been covered that you wanted to chime in on?
No, I think you've hit it on all of it. And as something Senator Tar brought up, we didn't just stop collecting income taxes. We're also not collecting so many sales taxes, meals taxes, capital gains taxes. These are all going to have an effect on the budget. We don't know how it's going to play out. We don't know what the fallout will be. But it will be all hands on deck from now until we can get back to work again. As you guys all probably heard, the president issued an advisory or an order to still continue to shelter in place until the end of April 30th. So we don't know how that's going to play out, but we're going to be working with small businesses, try to help them as much as we can. It's my hope that we will come through with all these unemployment promises so that workers who are laid off can continue to pay their rent, pay their mortgage, pay their utilities, because if we don't start paying those things, then more dominoes fall down the line, and that will create a lot of hardship because then landlords will be coming to us, banks will be coming to us, the utilities, et cetera. So we don't want to see that happen. So it's our hope that this unemployment plan will come through. And I think it is going to come through. We just got an email saying that we're just waiting for the rules to be finalized. So I believe we are going to get the extension on the number of weeks that you collect. We are going to see that extra $600 added to the typical amount of benefits. I think those are things that are going to happen. And most importantly, contractors and those who are 1099, we believe they will also be able to collect these benefits, whereas in the past they would not be able to because they weren't paying into the system. But these are unprecedented times, so an exception is being made. So hopefully the feds will come through on that. I think they will, and we'll be working with them every single day to make that happen.
Terrific. I know, just to round up last minute questions, Michelle had asked about the MCAS waiver. I know that it's the state had applied for the federal waiver, but I know there was some need for legislation at the state too. Does anyone have any updates on that?
Can you repeat the question? I didn't see it on the chat.
Yeah, it was about the MCAS waiver. So I know that there was both, obviously the state requirement for the federal requirement for state testing, and then there was also the state legislation that requires MCAS as a graduation requirement. And I believe that the waiver at the federal level has been applied for, but I believe there needs to be legislation, from what I've been told, passed at the state level as well to waive the state level MCAS requirement. And I was wondering I think what she was looking for is if there was any update on that.
So as of right now, no bill has been filed that would allow that to happen. My understanding, and Brian, I'm going to ask you, has any conversation taken place between you and the commissioner? Because it would be through his office that the request would be made of the legislature. And to my knowledge, that has not happened. I've seen most of the correspondence that's gone back and forth between the commissioner and the superintendents, and I don't really remember ever seeing a consensus or a subject matter of that being discussed. It was usually around transportation, food distribution, and other things, but I don't remember seeing this.
Yeah, he's definitely, I unmuted here. I'm unmuted. You can hear me? Yeah. So he has definitely referenced it several times. That is certainly something that superintendents talk about frequently. Even now that, when it was first short period and now that it is extended, we're now extended through the normal window where we would normally be beginning the administration of MCAS, but into May, the testing continues. So he has on calls certainly given his intention to seek legislative local approval to be able to waive all or portion or what have you. So his response has been, he is working on that. Obviously there's a federal waiver, but that it's still required locally. So his statements have been that he is approaching the legislature to be able to move forward with that. So
if I understand what you just said, we need to get the federal waiver first, and then we would then file the bill to do it here in Massachusetts?
So the federal waiver is all set. So that's done. So that was waived by the Department of Ed. So now that's a matter of taking local legislative authority to allow him to not have to administer it within the state.
So I'll bring that up, Michelle and others, with our leadership tomorrow when we're on our phone call with the other members of the House and see what the leadership is thinking about that. But as of today, no bill has been filed that I'm aware of to do that.
Yeah.
On the Senate side, Rep, I think that Senator Lewis, who is the education chair, very fittingly, is also heading up the education COVID-19 response. And I do think that they're working on this. I heard something about it yesterday. They didn't get too much into it. They did mention the fact that this has just happened and that they were going to need to figure out what the state was going to do in response. But it's my understanding that they're going to do whatever they need to make sure that they're in compliance and that these things are waived. So if we do require a legislative response to it, my understanding is that we're going to do that legislatively. So whatever it is, if we don't need to and we can just pass it and waive the mandates for them CAS requirements, great, then we won't need to. If we do need to, then that's what's going to be done. And Senator Lewis has made it clear that it's going to be heading up that effort. So, but I will get confirmation, like Rep. Hill, from leadership to make sure that that's actually happening and what the plan is moving forward.
We'll get back to you the next couple of days with a better answer than we just had.
Great, thank you. I will say the commissioners certainly made it sound like it was not going to be a huge hurdle, to be able to comply with that waiver locally. That I don't think there's many people that would argue that even if we are back in May and students are in school to take the test, I don't think anyone's going to be in the right mindset as well. So,
excuse me, I got to attend yet another Zoom meeting, so I want to thank everyone for doing this, but I do got to get to another meeting. If there are any questions or concerns, by all means, do email us. We're there any day of the week. But thank you, everybody, for tuning into this one. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Rep. Mira. Appreciate you.
Take care.
All right, I just wanted to open it up real quick for last minute questions. Anybody, town officials, anyone else on the call that had a question? Because I feel like we're coming to the end. All right, hearing none, I want to just say thank you again so much to the legislators for spending this time. I know that you are probably hectic beyond hectic at this point, and I hope that you are resting up well so that you can stay healthy for us, because that is such a important thing. I keep saying to Brian, like, the people that we can least afford to lose are probably the ones that are the most exposed right now, because you are, trying to make all these connections and make sure everything is working right. So it's definitely an area of concern. So appreciate it again. And like I said, I'm happy to coordinate getting information out to everybody if we want to put that all together in one email and send it off. So thank you. Stay well. Look forward to talking to you all soon.
Thanks,
You as well. Thank you.
Call anytime.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.
Thanks, you too.